This is Switzerland, a destination known for larger-than-life landscapes, vibrant and varied communities, and unrivaled engineering accomplishments. It's a place that honestly doesn't even need that introduction, but as host to my first ever solo trip to Europe, I must pay tribute where it's due. With just a map and a dream, join me on this candid mini-series as I spend 6 days traversing one of the most beautiful countries on the planet. A few months ago, I found myself craving some alone time, an opportunity to recharge and really kind of just reset. I've always found travel to be a great outlet for that, but I've never done it by myself. I've never experienced uninterrupted time to simply follow my own curiosity wherever it may take me. And that's what inspired this whole trip. It was an opportunity for me to create space to explore in whatever way I wanted. With that, I booked a few hotels, a rental car, and a flight, and made my way to Switzerland, where I kicked off the first leg of my trip in the charming town of Stein am Rhein. Famous for its finely painted facades and half-timbered houses, Stein am Rhein embodies all the elements of a storybook village. You know, the kind we were told only existed in fairy tales, but here I was, in person, completely enchanted by its character. With history dating back as far as the 5th millennium BC, Stein am Rhein has a long and colorful history, including tales of early Roman conquest and later Germanic invasions. But today, visitors, including myself, are captivated by the stories shared in the artwork adorning many of the 16th century buildings. It is mind-blowing to me just how well every detail has been preserved. It took a little less than 5 seconds for me to understand why this area is considered to be Switzerland's most beautiful town square. A sunset stroll illuminated all the little intricacies, from potted plants relaxing in the stillness of the shade to trickling fountains suppressing the cafe rumblings nearby. Life moved at a slower pace here, one attuned to intentional connection with others and a quiet pride in the community. If this were to say anything about the rest of my trip, boy was I in for an adventure and so ready for it. Functioning on just fumes of a Red Bull, however, it was time for me to confront my day one jet lag and head to my hotel for the night. And you might be wondering, Ashley, why did you choose to rent a car rather than use a famously on-time and efficient public transportation system? It really comes down to this. I am the type of person who wants to spontaneously stop and explore. If I pass an adorable town on a train and I can't stop and get out, I will hate that. And this little village I stumbled upon on my drive out is the perfect example of that. I pulled over, hopped out at a sunflower field as golden hour reached its peak, and just stood in the silence in awe of the serenity. Recharged from a full night's sleep, I was up early the next morning to catch a stellar sunrise over Lucerne. Chartered in the 1100s, the city of Lucerne emerged from a local monastery and fishing village, going on to become an important trade center some few decades later. Today, this Swiss German-speaking region is known for its well-preserved Old Town section, distinguished by Renaissance, medieval, and Baroque houses. It also serves as one of the most important cities for tourism in Switzerland. Taking advantage of the blissfully quiet city, I found myself only in the company of local street vendors preparing their stands for the day as I wandered through the labyrinth of narrow and dimly lit streets. Without question, the most notable sights in town are the Chapel Bridge and neighboring Watchtower. Though the picturesque Chapel Bridge once claimed the title as the oldest covered bridge in Europe, dating back to the 1300s, a fire in 1993 practically leveled the iconic landmark to its very foundation. Impressively, the Swiss rallied together to rebuild the bridge, opening again to the public just 1 year later. The water tower, known among other things as a former prison and torture chamber, was also given a renovation at this time. Now, if you're still intent on finding a real record holder, you can wander up the street to the neighboring bridge erected in 1407. This is the new, oldest covered bridge in Europe, and though its exterior offers a bit of whimsy and romance, the interior is brimming with 17th century artwork depicting the dance of death, reapers dragging folks deep into the underworld. I absolutely love weird and creepy history, but I think the scariest part of this bridge, not mentioned in the tourist brochures, was that it was covered with spiders. I only made it a few steps in before I decided to consider this a hard pass. Thank you, but no. Intentionally, I wrapped my morning stroll just as the hum of locals and visitors alike began to grow. While I could have easily spent days more exploring Lucerne, I felt myself craving some fun in the mountains, which led me to my next destination, Stoos. Nestled 1,300 meters or 4,200 feet up in its own little alcove of the Fernalpstock mountain, the carless village of Stoos is quite the introduction to this alpine region and a hell of an adventure to get to. If you choose to forego the strenuous uphill hike, the next best option to reach Stoos is by boarding the steepest funicular in the world, capping out at a gradient of 110%.
Herzlich willkommen bei der Stossbahn. Wir wünschen Ihnen eine gute Fahrt und einen schönen Aufenthalt auf dem Stoss.
Welcome to Mount Stoos. We wish you a good journey and a pleasant stay.
The ride takes just about 6 minutes and is not only an engineering marvel, but a front row seat to some of the most spectacular views in the area. Arriving on one of the earliest rail cars up, I found Stoos to be a quaint and sleepy village slowly coming to life as a small stream of visitors, including myself, began to trickle in. It may sound silly, but moments like this are my favorite type of travel experiences. I love to kind of just be a fly on the wall, observing the authentically local way of life, and I'd vote for this feeling above any thrill of a highly pushed tourist attraction. With that being said, I do obviously try to strike a balance, and despite this peaceful moment, I was actually on my way up to one of the most popular hikes in the region, the Stoos Ridge Trail. This trail is a narrow path traversing the very top of the mountain range, punctuated by chairlifts at either end of the hike. My recommendation would be to take the chairlift up to Klingenstock and catch the Fernalpstock lift back down, as the best views will be in front of you nearly the entire hike. Basically, when you get up to Stoos, go left. Once on the ridge, you'll follow a very well-marked and maintained trail over the course of about 2 hours through some of the wildest scenery you can imagine. What struck me right from the start was how impressive this vantage point was when it came to understanding the sheer scale of the Swiss Alps. Not only did it feel like these mountain ranges were infinite, but the teeny tiny towns way below me were a stark reminder of just how high up I was. If you have any fear of heights or cliffs or ledges, this may not be for you, but I will say that the trail did feel comfortably wide, and I never felt at risk of plummeting to my death, if that's any consolation to you.
It's a little strenuous, but it's really fun. And these views, I mean, this is only my second day in Switzerland, and I feel like they can't be beat, but I'm sure I'm gonna be proven wrong.
The trail ebbed and flowed over the natural curves of the mountaintop, growing steeper with each passing step. I tried to remind myself that Swiss hiking is a completely different caliber, and what might be qualified as a moderate hike here would most certainly be labeled as a strenuous hike in the US. Fortunately, my frequent photo stops allowed me to catch my breath and simply take in the sprawling landscape all around me. Not to mention, if the cows can do it, I could too. How's that for some sad motivation? Almost as rewarding as the scenery were the many opportunities to look back at the trail to see just how far I had come. By the time I reached the Fernalpstock chairlift, I was fully coasting on adrenaline and eager to discover everything else Switzerland had in store. I spent a few moments at the summit visiting the small petting zoo and nearby restaurant before hopping a ride back down the mountain. As if out of a movie, my descent was accompanied by the iconic echoes of an Alp horn in the distance. The Alp horn is a Swiss instrument traditionally used by shepherds to call their cows in from the pastures for milking. I managed to locate the musician himself shortly after arriving back in Stoos, and to my surprise, I think he was just getting some practice in. By now, Stoos was in full swing with many people out and about, taking in the lovely weather and some of the local landmarks. I, on the other hand, was continuing my journey down and preparing for a spontaneous detour to one of the lesser visited regions of Switzerland, Appenzell Ebenalp. Now, when I talk about regions of Switzerland, I'm actually referring to the 26 cantons or member states of the country, each having its own constitution, legislature, and executive policies. Each canton is vastly different from the next, not only in appearance, but in traditions and in language, Swiss German, French, Italian, and Romansh being the four main players. By the end of this mini-series, I will have spent time in 8 cantons attempting to speak 3 different languages. My tip for knowing what language to speak where? Just look at the town names and guess. Okay, where were we? Located in the remote northeast corner of the country, Appenzell is recognized as a more traditional canton of Switzerland with rural customs and lush green pastures providing the foundation for thriving cattle breeding and dairy industries. With the afternoon free, I felt compelled to take a leisurely drive through the countryside to see small towns dotting the rolling hills with an unspoken goal of possibly squeezing in another hike somewhere if the time allowed. But ultimately, I was just here to enjoy the journey. It's amazing that I made it anywhere, given the amount of times I jumped out of my car to snap a few photos. I found myself falling in love with these towns, captivated by their simplicity, their charm, and just their no-frills, honest living. This even included honesty stands, a convenient way for folks passing by to peruse local products and leave payment for the vendors to retrieve at a later time. After several hours on the road, I arrived at Wasserauen, a mountainous area serving as the launching point for numerous outdoor activities. Though I was so tempted to book a flight on a paraglide, I instead chose to reserve a spot on a cable car and make my way up to Ebenalp, where I could soak in the sights and fit in a short hike. An important thing to note is that cable cars all over Switzerland typically close down in the late afternoons or early evenings, meaning if you miss the last ride of the day, you will end up having to hike all the way down the mountain. Definitely keep this in mind because this is a spot you're going to want to spend a full day in. I instantly regretted making this just a detour and found myself with only a couple of hours to spare before I had to head out. Popular things to do here include paying a visit to the stunning Zeealpsee Lake, hiking the Schäfler Ridge Trail, checking out ancient cave dwellings, and grabbing a bite to eat at the famous cliffside restaurant. For my visit, I chose a trail at random and committed to only venturing an hour in before having to turn back around. Listen, I'm not happy about it either. In fact, since arriving back home and researching this location more thoroughly, I could have planned this out a little better. Even still, the trail I chose provided a great workout with steep switchbacks and rocky terrain and had continuously incredible views of the region the whole way through. I think I may have even caught a glimpse of the backside of that famous restaurant. Chasing the last few hours of sunlight, I made my way back down to Wasserauen and began the next leg of my journey across Switzerland to one of the most unexpected regions in the country, one where humble homes emerge from fallen boulders, where palm trees meet lively shorefront promenades, and where a seemingly innocent sail could get you arrested. This is Ticino.